Happy Ole. You're watching the Now Morning Show, and we are getting ready for what will be a spectacular 2025. And so naturally, we need to talk about safety for our pets ahead of what we anticipate to be fireworks tonight. To do so, we are joined by the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Veterinary Association, Dr. Paul Crooks. Good morning and welcome back, Dr. Crooks.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and compliments of the season to you and the viewers.
All the best, as we like to say this time of year. And what we want is the best for our pets. So jumping straight into the conversation, we have it every single year. The conversation about making sure that we keep our pets safe when these loud and very flamboyant fireworks are going off. How does that begin? First and foremost, do we chain them up or set them free? Keep them inside? What is the best move?
All right. Well, we're not only going to talk about pets today, we'll talk about livestock as well. So in the case of, let's say, a natural disaster, a hurricane or earthquake, heaven forbid, generally the best practice is to let the animals go free. The animals then choose where is the safest place for them to be. So in a hurricane where there may be flooding or debris, if the animals are tied or trapped in a pen, they won't be able to choose where to go to escape dangers or hazards in the environment. Similarly, with pet animals, and especially with dogs, we see this a lot. In the case of fireworks, we see a lot of anxiety. The animals become very nervous, they may shake, they may cower, they may look for corners to hide. So when an animal is tied, that may or may not be beneficial. When an animal is tied, you have to make sure it is in a very safe environment, a confined space where the animal cannot escape. If, however, and that's just for the case of fireworks, if, however, the animal is able to escape, if you have the animal in a pen, you'd be surprised at what they may do in order to try to find what they consider to be a safe space. Animals may destroy the walls of the pen, depending on the material the pen is made out of. They may find a way to break a lock, depending again on how the pen is locked. They may climb out of a pen, even though they've never climbed before. They may injure themselves by trying to squeeze under something. And the truth is that the animals panic because they're showing an extreme fear response, because here are all of these noises. They don't know when they're coming. The animals are caught off guard, and they don't know if the noise represented a threat. We generally want and hope that animals are part of the family. At the very least, the pet animals are part of the family, which means that for the most part, animals have an emotional bond with their owners. And that emotional bond can be very, very important at times where animals are anxious. So even before we go to whether they should be tied or not, please, please, please use fireworks safely. Do not use them in a residential area. If you can, limit your use to a playing field in the neighborhood, somewhere that is removed from residential areas, a big open area where it is likely that the firework is not going to set anyone on fire, set any animal on fire. No animal is likely to bite it. But if the animal is kept in a pen, a dog or a cat, perhaps you should consider letting the animal go for the reason that the animal might injure itself. But also make sure that every one of your animals, livestock or pets, whether it's dog or cat, has an identification on its neck that links it back to the owner. Because many times, while the animals may do fine and survive, they could run away for miles. And reuniting the owner and the pet is of extreme importance after the fireworks are over, after the celebrations are over.
Right. That definitely is something that we could perhaps work on and explore in a whole other conversation, because there are limitations as to what we are afforded here in Trinidad and Tobago. No chips, or at least not inexpensively. But you did mention that you wanted to talk about another type of animal as well, and that is the livestock, which usually we see in larger numbers. So how do we secure or support secure safety for these sort of animals during what will be fireworks and those loud explosions?
Generally, livestock are pack animals. They are prey animals. They're accustomed to being eaten in the wild. So they usually run in packs because the sick, injured one will run behind and everybody else will live. The pack behavior protects them generally. So animals in livestock in general, they prefer to be with other animals. So as far as possible, that reduces their anxiety. If you can put animals at the very least close to one another, you don't want any accidental breeding to happen, but you do want that the animals are close enough that they can comfort one another. Definitely a mother and her lambs. Perhaps all your breeding females can be placed together to reduce anxiety because these animals don't want to be alone. In fact, we see that in the prey animals as well, is in the predator animals as well. You see it in your cats, you see it in your dogs, because they come to the owners for that anxiety control, for that comfort. So with the livestock, definitely let them be together. And again, some sort of identification that links them back to the owner. So we do have microchips, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago. The issue with the use of microchips is that there is currently no universal database where, let's say I found a lost dog or a lost sheep, I scan it, I realize there's a chip. There's no way for me to pull up online to find who this chip belongs to. So you have to make sure that even if you do place a microchip, for example, on your animal, that whoever finds your animal is able to link it back to you specifically as the owner. So with livestock, group them together if you can. Generally, they are not going to display signs of anxiety, but we have seen some animals, sheep, goats, kept as pets, even chickens kept as pets, where we've seen anxiety in these patients as well. And regarding that, if it is very severe and your vet, as you have a good relationship with your vet, there may be a worthwhile discussion about maybe considering a sedative or some sort of anxiety relieving medication for animals that are very susceptible prior to the fireworks demonstrations.
Now, Dr. Crooks, you mentioned that you would advise it based on a relationship with your vet. Is it that we shouldn't be looking at an over-the-counter option? Because those do exist, don't they? In terms of sedatives, specifically.
Yes. Okay, so it depends on what types of sedatives we're talking about. Generally, there are sedatives that are available over the counter. Generally, they should not be. Sedatives are a class of drug where you could have very negative effects as a result of an overdose. Some animals may respond negatively, so not even an overdose. The appropriate dose may cause an animal to respond negatively. It is best that sedatives in particular are withheld for use by medical professionals and only used on the guidance of medical professionals. There are some herbal type remedies available now that may provide additional benefits, may help animals remain calm in the same way to humans, where certain types of music or aromatherapy may provide benefit for anxious persons. With dogs, there are potentially some herbal remedies that may help. As far as whether or not they do help, that's a different story. So this is where, correct. So this is where you need really the advice of your vet in terms of the experience there, in terms of what works and what doesn't, and the appropriate doses to give and when to give it, and so on, so that you see the appropriate effect.
Well, Dr. Crooks, it's always a pleasure to chat you up, to learn something new, because I was confidently talking about how friends of mine are about to go to the pharmacy or local spaces to get sedatives for their dogs. No clue that it shouldn't be administered that way ideally, but I'm glad I do know that now. My final question to you is alternatives, because I have been to the University of Google and I've seen that they have suggested different ways to wrap your dogs, particularly that supposedly soothe. I've seen persons put noise-canceling earphones on their dogs as well. In terms of alternatives, any that you would recommend as we head into this new year?
All right, so two things then. One is that The anxiety that comes from the loud, sudden noises is a learned behavior generally. Animals develop it over time, which means it is a behavior that can be conditioned out. So there are ways to train your pets to be less anxious. They may still be anxious, but less anxious. And in terms of squeezing an animal, it works. It genuinely works. But in particular, it works if you squeeze the animal as the owner. So if you take your anxious dog and you hold the anxious, shaking dog who is trying to dig under the couch, if you take that dog onto your lap and squeeze the animal, you will feel the shaking reduce. You will feel the shaking stop. So you will recognize that the animal is comforted by that squeezing feeling. I don't know what exactly does it, but it works.
Everybody likes cuddles. Now, this, though, is another conversation that I'm hoping we'll have in the 2025 era of perhaps passing our anxieties onto our domesticated pets. But at the very least, I think that we've gotten a good bit of detail on how we can navigate what will be some fantastic fireworks tonight. But if you were to wish Trinidad and Tobago a bright and prosperous 2025, I'd appreciate that as our closing today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And Trinidad and Tobago, please, in 2025, let us love one another, let us support one another, love the animals, love the living beings on this planet, love our environment. We have to protect ourselves and each other. And for more information, you all can always call the Animal Hospital at 239-7837. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Dr. Crooks, for joining us, and all the best for 2025. Guys, we are going to continue here on the Now Morning Show with even more things you can take into the new year. Stick around, your birthdays are next.